I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy. And today we're going to talk about what's been going on in Britain for the last few days, almost a week now, I guess.
Yeah.
So you got any thoughts on what's been going on in Britain?
Well, I mean, it's the inevitable consequence of the policies that all the people in England have voted for, and I'd say all of Europe as well.
I don't really know if they voted for it because they just didn't come out in the vote this time, and there wasn't enough time for the counterparty to kind of rise to power.
No, but I mean, like, over the past 30, 40, 50 years, they have been allowing all of this unfettered immigration and all of these people to pour in.
Well, it's the EU in general have started as this financial union, and now it's become highly political and politicized in this globalization of Europe, which I don't know is a good thing because each individual country is not putting their own interests first. Mm-hmm. And you're seeing the deterioration of the society itself from the foundation of the family into basically who's making up the society. You're having weak individual citizens making up the society.
And I mean, let's just go over the facts a little bit. I don't think anybody doesn't know what happened, but essentially what triggered a bunch of riots and protests from both sides, essentially the immigrants, mostly Muslim, and then the British native people, was the stabbing of 3 little girls at a dance studio in Southport. So they finally released the name because they arrested the guy. It was a minor who was turning 18, I believe, this week or next week, called Axel Ruda Kababamama. Again, it's not a British name, let's say.
Yeah. But he is British, I guess.
He was born in Wales, yes. Yeah. But I mean, nowadays that doesn't really mean anything because it has been reported, and there have been studies done where the children of migrants are the ones that are joining the gangs and are the most violent sector of the population. So all of these young kids who maybe feel like the country owes them something or they're not happy being there, who knows what the motives are, but because they live in these enclaves, and there's been certain sectors of these countries, especially in Europe, is almost ghettoized to a point where the immigrants are pushed out to, where it's more affordable, etc., where there's more housing and more accommodation. They've been kind of enclaved into these little subgroups within society, and they don't really have to interact, so they start forming these gangs, and they start forming, I think a lot of it comes out of resentment.
Well, I really hope the citizenry is able to see through this. I think this, honestly, the government itself set the grounds for this tension to arise, and now I think the government wants to use this tension to start stripping freedoms. There's already talks of if you do a retweet, which isn't even your tweet, you just repost something that the government deems hateful, that they're going to arrest you now. Mm-hmm. The UK already has massive hate speech laws where if they deem something you said as inappropriate, they can arrest you. But now it's if you agree with something somebody else said, they can arrest you. Yeah. And then on top of that, they're talking about pre-crimes. Pre-crimes is insane. They're saying if they believe a certain sector of the city might be violent, that they want to limit the movement of that sector of the city. This is a pre-crime, and this is going to happen in impoverished neighborhoods, that these people aren't going to be able to move throughout the city.
But it's funny because they're willing to do the pre-crime, but only with the native British locals. Anybody that, if you prosecute them, might be deemed as Islamophobic, then they're not going to go after them.
Yeah, but you have to realize they're doing that because they want to create more tension between these two groups to create more violence. If they did it non-discriminatory and limited, it would still discriminate against the people that they're saying can't move, but it would cause actually less tension. I hope the Muslims and the native people can come together and realize they're not the enemy of each other, but it's the government itself.
True, but at the same time, I think that, for example, importing a completely different cultural and philosophical and moral people to a place that already has established morals and having these clashes just continue. I mean, we coming from Canada saw this almost daily.
Well, I will say this.
It doesn't work.
the grounds for a civil war in not just the UK, but a lot of places in Europe and around the world has been set. Now, Europe is far more likely to go into a civil war because the tensions are rising so high. In the United States, you used to have a lot of Mexican immigrants coming up. It's not so much Mexican immigrants anymore, but Mexican immigrants actually moved into the U.S. population fairly well
Yeah.
because of their religious backgrounds and their basic beliefs. Americans and Mexicans have so much in common culturally.
Yep.
Muslims and Europeans, there's a bit of a rift in their beliefs there. And this is why you see a huge uprising in rape statistics in many parts of the EU,
Yep.
where it's military-aged Muslims they're letting in. They need to be letting in Muslim families if they're going to let Muslims in, because they want to become part of the community and part of the society.
But even then, with a lot, I mean, it depends who we're talking about and who you import into the country. But even if it is within families, I mean, the base of the morality and the values and what people uphold is different. So in some circumstances, things that are what used to be seen as completely like a horrible thing you could do are being now done and allowed and accepted by the general populace, who probably still feel like it is wrong. For example, for the gang rapes to be going on, or the marrying very, very young wives, which has happened in England in the past, and it has not been prosecuted because it's a religious thing.
Well, also,
they're just having to accept all of that.
also these communities are very much insulated. They vote in a homogenized bloc to gain power within the political system, but they don't. It's not in their own interest, or they don't see it in their own interest to report a lot of crimes that they feel are okay to commit within their own society, within their own home culture. So they're importing new societal beliefs.
Yeah, and the police are left without basically any resources to do anything about it. And then because some people that hold those values and those beliefs join the police force, so the crimes are way less prosecuted than they would have been, let's say, 20, 30 years ago.
I've been keeping an eye on a lot of the EU, not just the UK. And Hungary, for one, did not want immigration, and they've resisted the best of their ability. And now the rest of the EU is trying to get rid of Hungary. They've made proposals to kick Hungary out of the EU, but their citizenry is very happy with the decisions Viktor Orban's made. Now, I also have kept an eye on Germany. Now, in Germany, they started shutting down mosques. There's a very famous mosque called the Blue Mosque, and all the other mosques related to that mosque have been getting shut down. Now they're saying it's in the name of feminism because they're not respecting women's beliefs, and it's in the name of anti-Semitism. But the fact is, if you do let these mosques get shut down, even if you don't agree with their beliefs, they're going to come after Christianity next, and the next religion after that next. They're creating something that a portion of the population agrees with to shut down the mosques. Next thing, they're going to rally up all the Muslims, say, oh, we want to shut down the Christian churches. So I hope the Christians and the Jews aren't naive enough to think, oh, let's shut down the mosques and we're gonna solve all problems, because that's not going to solve the problem.
No, and I mean, I am not religious at all, but I do think that religion and the religion that founded each of these countries should be upheld, because it is what used to hold the fabric of society together.
Well, it's what used to give these different countries their moral values. And now we have a shifting moral value, whatever the LGBTQ government decides that their cause of the day is, that's their new moral value. And if the other moral no longer works for that, they just get rid of that.
And it is worrying that Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, for example, was willing to go after the people that were angry about the stabbings, going back to what actually started this, but then before and after has been saying that violence towards the Islam and the Muslim community should not be happening. It's not allowed. However, we see that it is the people, especially the younger kids from that community, that go out and beat up for lack of a better word, the white kids. I mean, we've seen a lot of these videos on social media where gangs of these people go and attack the white kids, and then the white kids get blamed or arrested for it. And it seems like they're trying to cull their population by using another population to do so.
Yeah, it's just crazy. And when you start adding in the taking over of the farms and the food resources and water resources, what happens if there starts to be a civil war? They've already minimized their food production and their ability to gain water and things like this. These are basic necessities. This will turn a civil war into a full-on war within Europe.
And I mean, that could be done to maybe unify all of Europe, possibly under, a CBDC or a more united European Union, which would essentially strip people of their individual freedoms of being part of a country, not just a group of random people.
I've talked about this for a long time, and that I believe Europe is going to be the first major currency to fall into a CBDC. And I'm closely watching the European economy, because I think when it does collapse, the UN or somebody's going to step in as the savior, offer the CBDC, which now people can get food and water resources. Where if there was a collapse before, but they hadn't called the food and water resources, people would still maybe resist the CBDC. But I think they're going to be very keen to go into it when the full realization of what's been created happens.
And the CBDC, which is a centralized banking digital currency, would essentially allow that big overpowering government that's called the European Union to see every single transaction that people do, either give them money or take money away. And it's just another way to keep a hold of and control of the population. And if it is the excuse to do it is because of safety and because we need to safeguard the population, then I think most people would be okay with it. And also, if they get a basic income, they could try to do it through giving everybody a universal basic income, but you have to be within the system to get it.
I think people need to pay attention to what happened in Canada. And Trudeau went way too far with the truckers' protest, and he started going after bank accounts. And he started trying to go after Bitcoin. And they were able to shut off people's bank accounts. That was a warning to the rest of the world. And he did it for a very brief time, because I think they realized, they kind of tipped their hat and showed their hand. So I hope everybody paid attention to what happened in Canada to those truckers when they took their bank accounts and they weren't able to pay their mortgages and their houses got taken away. Because what happened to them could happen to you. And you don't have to be involved in a protest. The government can just disagree with something that you're saying.
And I think that might be the reason why they're not trying to really stop everything that's going on in England and in Britain and with the riots. I mean, they're kind of just letting it happen. They're trying to step in, but only to stop one side, and that only makes that one side more enraged and angry and outraged. And even like looking up and researching this story and what sparked the riots with the 17-year-old, most of the articles, number one, didn't mention the guy, then didn't want to release the name because he was a minor, but the judge then did decide to do it. But most of the articles mostly just talked about because it happened at a Taylor Swift themed event at a dance studio. Like half of the articles were about Taylor Swift.
Well, this was the thing. It almost
and then they talk about misinformation.
It almost seemed like this is their new strategy for the government itself to put out information that's incorrect, have major influencers they disagree with pick up those things by saying, oh, this guy's a migrant, and saying, oh, you're spreading disinformation. Now we want to throw you in jail. This is their next step, to start stripping freedom of speech specifically, and online freedoms. But I think that's just about it for today. Or do you have anything else?
Well, the only thing is people keep letting it happen. People keep being too afraid to speak up and to say, hey, this is what we're noticing. Hey, we don't want this in our country. And I think that the veil of we are virtuous and kind and nice because we don't talk about X, Y, or Z groups has to start coming down. Otherwise, this is going to keep happening.
Well, more and more people are standing up. Me and you stood up. Me and you left Canada. Me and you are taking a stand. And I'm seeing a lot of people in Ireland and the rest of the world doing the same thing.
But for now, we hope you have a great rest of your day. Please remember to subscribe, like if you do, disagree in the comments with us if you want to. But again, we're trying to build this channel. We'd love to start live streaming so you get a little bit more of a relaxed video with that.
Thanks for watching, and watch out for our next video.